Alright, well, we're going to pick back up with part 7 here, the Ford 1951 Ford F1 rebuild. So a couple things happened since last time I spoke with you. The rear suspension, as you know, was tacked in place, and we brought it back up off the ground onto the sawhorses, as I mentioned, and then we wanted to confirm that the rear suspension is parallel with the front suspension. We don't want this thing to crab walk down the road too bad. So we want to make sure everything is truly in alignment. Now originally I measured off the frame, off the back frame horn to the center line of the axle, original center line of the axle, which we marked when we disassembled it. Same thing was true here from the front frame horn to center line of the axle. What you can't be sure is if the frame might be tweaked. So you could potentially rebuild this thing, tweaked or not. But if the frame's tweaked, you might end up kind of going down the road a little odd. So we wanted to make sure that everything was in parallel, front and rear suspension in parallel. A friend of mine, Philip, he counseled me on this, and this was his suggestion. It worked very well. I took a string line and basically split the center of the hub with the string and a plumb bob on the end, and I came down to the floor and I made a dot. I made a dot where the plumb bob was, and I just made a circle so that I could not lose track of my dot. So I did that at all four wheels, and here's the two marks for the front. Here's the other one, and then we did the same thing on the back. Once we had those dark dots marked down the floor, here's the other one. I'm not sure if you can see, it's kind of dark back here. So here's the other one. What we did was we measured diagonally. So we measured from this dot up to the dot on the opposing side front, and we did the same here toward this side of the rear. And what we came up with was 130 inches on both sides, and that's the key. It's not about the dimension, it's about, are the dimensions the same? And 130 inches exactly within a 64th or a 32nd. It was really close. That's nice. That just says that our front and rear suspensions are parallel, so I'll have the exact same dimension between the center hub of the front and the back. So that means where the rear suspension sits right now is a great place for it to be, and that's where it will stay. So since we know that's where it's going to stay, the next course of action is to secure these front mounts. That takes us back to pinion angle. A lot of research, again, talked with Philip. He gave me some advice as well. And what I'm going to do is, as I mentioned in the prior video, I'm going to tack these with some relatively heavy tacks in what I think is the right place. And then once the drive line is fully installed, it will double check the angle between our pinion and our crank, and we'll make sure, our pinion and our drive shaft, and we'll make sure that we're happy with that angle. So the angle we're going for is 0. Nice and easy. The way we're determining that at this point is we've got the level part of the frame showing to be quite level, and this is the midsection of the frame from front suspension area on back here to just to the hump that goes over the rear suspension. So this section nice and level, and with that being level, we're now working to get the pinion angle measured off the face of the pinion collar there where the drive shaft bolts on. We want to get that also close to 0, and that's about as close as I can get it. It's pretty darn close. It may be half a degree down, maybe dead on. I replaced this angle finder with a magnetic level, and it looked truly level. So I'm quite confident we're sitting at 0. Then I also checked the dimension on the mounts on both sides, because we could still be askew this way or that way and still be level measuring it at the center point. So I made sure that those dimensions were the same here, basically between the top of the mount and the top of the frame, and they are the same on both sides. So we're happy. It's time to get to tacking. So let's see what we can do about that. All right, well, we're running, this is a MIG system. We've got CO2, argon, gas. It's not FlexCore, it's just MIG. And we're running 30 thousandths wire. And my particular inexpensive welder doesn't have amp readings and the like. It just has a few switch selections. So, but what we need to do is get down here where we can work. First thing we're going to do is we've got a magnetic level here on the side, and we're going to secure this to the frame. It's pushed all the way back at the bottom, so we're as far back as we can. Still a slight gap toward the top versus the bottom, but that will not be a problem. And then we're moving the brace this way, back and forth, using this level to make sure that we're nice and true. And so we need to be right about there. Sorry, I know you can't see it. Let me tack this back side, and we'll go from there. Okay, we'll recheck our level, make sure we're still good. We're quite good. So let's go ahead and put a few tacks on this thing, and we're going to put some fairly heavy tacks. Some of you almost call it stitch welding, just because we're not going to fully weld this in at this point. We will ultimately weld in the rest of the bracing, because it's not a significant function of the pinion angle, but this is. So we're going to, like I said, heavy tacks, actually almost a stitch welding, so that it'll carry its weight for the time until we get the engine in place. There we go. Okay, I think that's way well enough for what we need at this point. And like I said, we'll do a full and complete weld out. We've probably got 3/4 inch welds, so I think again that's enough for what we're trying to do. If I look and see again, still looks nice and level. I'm happy. And yeah, we'll do it to the other side, and then those will be fixed. So we'll get back with you. Okay, well, we're going to finish up this segment, this video with this segment. The frame is back on the ground. The rear suspension's installed, front suspension's installed. Happy. One thing you'll notice, this thing's got truck tires on the front of it. Then you've got car tires on the back. Don't judge it by the tires at this point. These are not keepers. These are just some throw down tires to get us moving. These are actually 5 on 4 1/4, or 5 on 4 1/2 Ford pattern. These are the ones that came off the old Thunderbird, where I got this suspension from, 5 on 5. So anyway, don't worry about the tire sizes. They look awkward as they can be right now, because again, these aren't by any means the tires we're going to use. We cover a little bit about what we did here to finish this up. We finished the welding on the support plates, also welded in the gussets. Please don't judge my welding. I'm pretty sure it's not going to go anywhere. It's just not necessarily going to look real pretty. So we've got that done. We've installed the airbag for the final time. We also installed the new sway bar in links, waiting on bushings for the sway bar. They're in the mail, so the sway bar is currently out for the time being, but it'll be put back in as soon as the sway bar bushings get here. We installed the shock mounts here to the lower control arm, and then comes up here with 2 shock tabs mounted to the frame. We basically, while it was up on the sawhorses, put a jack under the control arm and brought the control arm up to what I'm considering to be ride height for now anyway. And then we set the shock at 12 inches center line of hole, and then that's where we placed our shock tabs. So by all indication, that's a pretty good spot, but we want to find out. So where are we at? Again, we have not finished the weld out on the front mounts. When I did weld this out, dropped the rear suspension, I covered it with a fiberglass blanket, and then finished up this welding. And I'm pretty happy. I mean, on the inside of the frame, still a little grinding to do up in there, but on the inside of the frame, we closed this pocket here, and just to reinforce things a bit, and then we welded in this 2-inch square tube cross member, and then we did a little bit of finish off welding up inside here, welding all along the back side of the frame to the plate mount. One thing to note, this is kind of optional. Certain models, I believe from 53 to 57 or so, they actually had a cross member that went across the top of the rear suspension, top of the rear end. Actually, the shocks mounted on that cross member. This one didn't have that. Again, this is light 2x2 tube, so it doesn't add much weight, and hopefully it just adds to the rigidity of the rear here. So yeah, maybe unnecessary, but cheap enough, both in weight and in cost, because I already had it from a prior project. So there you go. Next course of action is going to be to roll it, and yeah, it's a roller, which is cool. We're going to roll it out of the garage and set the cab on it, and then we're going to turn it around, push it back in the garage backwards. Here's the garage door. And push it back in the garage backwards so we can bring the engine and transmission in from this direction, and then we're going to start working on engine and transmission. There are some loose ends always to deal with, but we will deal with them. You might notice these are 1/2 inch by 5 inch bolts. I need 1/2 inch by 2 1/2. These were some from another part of the construction, so I just stuck them in here to pin it for now, but tomorrow I'll try to get some 1/2 inch by 2 1/2 inch bolts, washers, and nuts. Yeah, locking nuts. So I'm thrilled. I listen to my own videos and realize my voice never sounds very thrilled, but I'm tickled to death about it right now. Let me just show you. I've got some air in the airbags. Let me see if I've got that screwdriver in my pocket. Yeah, I've got air in the airbags, so you'll be able to see if I can release some air here. I just got, you can probably see there, I've just got some air connectors on there. You can see the frame coming down. Coolest part though is to watch the frame come up. So let me show you that real quick, because I'm excited and ready for this thing to have a full air ride system in it, so I can watch this thing go up and down. Hang on a minute, I'll show you some. Alright, so we're going to put some air in this side and see it come up. Get right here. There we go. So there it is. Be anxious to see whenever the air ride suspensions, the air ride system's in there, how well it comes up and down, and where the final ride height ends up being. So, rear suspension's mostly complete, and we'll start working toward installing a motor and transmission.